we're going with this black aluminum panel under the windows where they have a, this picture's been colored, so it's kind of hard to, you know, but, it could be
Here.
almost anything, yeah.
Like a Mapes panel?
But we were going to just go back with a black panel in there. That one.
Yeah, that's Mapes.
And those are all postcards, all, you know, all we can find so far. So they're not very many sharp photographs of it. And that's a dark bronze, almost black. But the advantage of that is it's anodized instead of painted. So it's a lot better material thing.
I like the concept of it, but I guess my fear is that it would be, if you just use a regular storefront, it would appear to be too modern. And I don't know how you detail that to capture the old profiles of the windows.
Yeah, of course I don't have the old profiles, but it's better one than that, but, yeah, it's just a 2x4 storefront. And, we're gonna use the original doors back, wood doors. They're full glass, but they've got big, you know, wood. There are a lot of wood on them. You can see from the picture there, but,
I think it's a great idea to restore it to back what it originally was. I think if somebody came in and wanted to do what they've done to it, and it was the way that it originally was, we would definitely not have approved that. But my concern too is it doesn't look like it's just 2x4s to me. It looks like it's a lot wider.
well, there's 2 columns. Oh,
I mean, over here this looks narrower, but over
if you
the
look at the
side.
floor plan, it is wider. There are columns that support that beam, just like the ones on the Court Street side.
Oh, I see. Oh, I see.
Yeah.
But I mean, in the window detail in here, is that what you're talking about? That looks a lot thicker there than here.
This beam that's coming down through here that's holding up all this wall right here.
Right.
It's not spanning all the way. It's got
It's
columns.
got supports, yeah, brick supports on it.
And that's what we're gonna,
So you're just gonna encase those with brake metal, or?
yeah, gonna put 4x4 steel tubing in there, rectangular, and then wrap it with, not brake metal, but, you know, heavy gauge aluminum.
All that brick's gonna have to come out on that side, I guess, is that right?
Yeah. If you look at it, you'll see immediately that it's put in there. Like I said, I've looked at it 1,000 times today, but now that you know it, you just look at it, that's obvious.
Yeah.
You can't quite see it, I don't have a very good, I couldn't get a better picture.
Do you think there's other existing buildings that still have storefronts like this that would give you some guidance in terms of how to replicate the casings of those windows to make them, I mean, your drawing looks, you know, a lot more modern.
It does.
I mean, that's just a sketch to give us an idea.
Yeah,
But
it is, and we didn't try to detail it, we don't have any details of what the exact, you know, motor
Right.
like. They might have been 2x4s, which is what we're talking about putting in there. And then on the corners would be a 4x4 with, I'm sure, 1908, I believe.
is that when it was built?
Yeah. I might look across the street, we might have overlook,
Right.
because they were built by the same guy.
Oh, really?
In fact, if you look, the brick
Yeah,
brick on this building is the
Yeah.
brick
Yeah.
on our building, and this brick is the trim brick on our building.
Yeah,
It's
same decorative pieces of it.
And it's what's called brick on brick. It's pretty rare. The mortar joints are only about 1/8 of an inch thick, and it takes a special brick to lay the mortar joints that thick, that thin. And so you usually don't see much of it. I know Ann Hutton's house down there, the Finley house is brick on brick. And then our building is, and that building is, and there's another one up there on the hill that is. I can't think of which one it is now.
So, I mean, I think the concept is, I think the board is all in favor of. but it's the details. As far as trying to replicate
Yeah.
something of this nature, whenever that's more of a modern style.
Well, I think it's just because it lacks all the wear and tear and, you know, one's a photograph and one's just a sketch. So, it does look more modern, you know, there's no way around that, but so does this if you, and we also, we weren't gonna put the awnings on there. The only way conventional glass can be put in there is with extruded aluminum tubing, 2x4s and 4x4s on the corner. So basically what y'all are calling storefront is just really what it is, but that's really what that is. I don't know where to find what kind of mullions would have been originally in that building, but that's what all we can go with. I can bring you a sample of the tubing with the window in it, but it's just storefront. It would look just like this though.
Yeah, I'm just, as far as, I don't know if these are the brick columns that you were referencing, that providing support to the overhead wall.
No,
Here.
they're metal columns.
These here,
Here's a
that were
brick
faced up.
column. Yeah.
Yeah, you got brick here, what were these?
They're metal, and then, well, I don't have those, but I'm sure they're behind that brick wall, because it's holding up this whole beam right here, or, yeah, this beam, or it's the same as this beam, so we would have to just scrap them to match what's here. These are just painted black, I'm guessing. I think it's the same too, they're right here. They're just painted white here.
Hey.
I've never noticed those, or, I didn't know if those were decorative or weight bearing.
Stuck downstairs for budget.
And the other problem I have is
Mercy.
the stair door.
We're discussing this about
In the stairway.
my,
No landing, just have to swing down. Yeah, it's literally in the steps. So,
What's a pretty building?
but this picture's kind of vague right there, so it's
It
helping
is.
us out a little bit.
And that's the problem, trying to figure out what materials they actually had there,
Yeah.
what we're doing.
Well, they obviously had some type of metal, I'm assuming steel, that it was painted black or,
Can you provide some more detail on,
yes, like I said,
This
I'll bring
is-
you a sample.
okay.
Is this a sign right, I mean, it looks like there's lettering right here.
There's a,
Like, it looks like there's a sign, I mean, that's wide enough for a sign. I mean, I don't know.
there's a wood cook stove in there, it looks like, and then.
Yeah.
And
this
it does
is
appear to
the
have a-
insurance salesman. You can read his name.
a horizontal member that's fairly deep.
This one. You can
See,
read
it looks like this is the same width, all this is pretty
Yeah.
wide.
That's in this color, so.
Yeah.
I think it would be helpful if you could provide, a little bit more information as to, what you all are actually entertaining the materials here. Because this doesn't look like this. I don't know whether this is painted, like you
Well,
said,
yes,
or
it's
if it was wrapped, bricked,
Well, it didn't
or
have
faced
that.
up
Just
with
based
brick,
on
or.
my memory, is that building
Wasn't
in that
brick,
bad
so
a
it
shape,
was
or did they
painted
just wanna
steel,
you know, revamp?
They didn't
They
have-
wanna go back.
Is it possible
The
that some of
original.
that metal's still
Yeah,
there?
okay.
You
See,
think
I
they
don't
just
think
bricked it, or
this
you think they ripped it all out?
addresses that.
I got you. I
Well,
got you.
when we tear that brick off, we might
I
find, that's
said,
kinda,
they'd have to leave it there for support, wouldn't you think?
yeah,
Yeah.
the
I
post
mean,
is there,
that's
I'm
just
sure to support it.
facade that brick is there.
I don't know who we could ask to find out. I've asked all over the town when that was possibly done. but,
Well, and,
So
you know,
did they stain the existing brick or did they re-brick the whole building?
No, they just bricked up one where the windows are.
It's slightly different if you look at it.
Yeah, you can see that car window just about.
Yeah, I never had until we
Yeah.
were presented with
I
this.
hadn't either.
But this brick looked, maybe it's just the bad photograph, but this brick looks more blonde than the photograph does.
Well,
It's probably just the age of the photograph maybe, or,
yeah, well, you got it, I don't know if you got that one, but that's a
yeah.
Google thing, that's not a big deal.
Yeah, see, this looks more brown than that's, and so I just wondered if they, when they put this brick in, maybe they stained all this, or?
No, it's just not brick on brick, so it's not, it's
And
got
I don't
mortar
see
joints in
that.
it.
Oh, I see, okay.
And
Not
it is,
that.
and,
Yeah.
And it doesn't look like that.
but the brick matches really well.
Similar to that other one that we did, that was taken out on funky corners on
I
top.
should have taken a better photograph of it.
No,
I don't know.
Well, I've got 5 cameras like that. And I'm across the street, take it out the window.
I think everybody's in favor of you being able to do it.
Yeah.
Just making sure it gets replicated.
Correct. The way the guidelines read is any modification, exterior material for additions, anything of that nature should be compatible with those in the original building, original design. Everyone, I think, just like Mr. Geisler stated, I love that idea.
Yeah, I think it'll
And
help the whole
trying to,
thing,
and we considered another matter that you were involved with at the last meeting relative to the building as far as far as trying to restore the buildings to what they used to be. I think that's why these OH guidelines were written. You know, but we just need some more detail on what you're entertaining here. And need to try to get it as best we can. Back to that.
Well, that's our intention, of course.
Is it the windows that put you off?
yeah, it's
Just too many windows, not enough
Can't
brick?
really,
I don't mind it all being.
I think just some more
I mean, she
information,
could replicate this profile.
if you could provide to
I
us.
guess I'm
what
assuming
you're-
that's
Well,
wood
example.
Yeah.
right in there.
Okay.
Would, probably would still insert. This is just too contemporary.
I got you.
Special meeting.
We can do that.
It's got real
Any-
straight on the
any-
side.
If you can get a sample, and
Samples
then,
here.
again, I mean, with the goal of trying
Yeah, I got you.
to
So it's real-
replicate,
Got a real
to go back to the original.
modern look of the line.
So-
I
We're
got you.
trying to.
Okay, well, I mean, that's
put
what,
stuff together for White Island, that's actually much harder.
okay.
Yeah.
So, why don't we, if I understand correctly, then we can just table this matter until you have some samples. If you'll let staff know, then we'll schedule a special meeting to get together and then go from there. Okay. Okay.
$18 for that one. Right, I mean, it's all-
We're done, you got here just in time.
If you go by these columns, they're just round, they're round.
Was it number 4?
I'll try to find some more. I know, we can't, we'll have. Deal with the property. I mean, you can't get those
I don't have the mind.
Okay. If you could bring some samples, let staff know. Staff will send out an email, and then we'll get together.
Okay.
Okay? Thank you. That concludes
1 o'clock.
all of the applications that are on the agenda for this evening. We have a discussion item as far as multi-tenant signs. That was one of the issues that was brought up last time. I sent out an email along with staff to, at bequest of Mr. Geisler, to reconsider it. You all have any comments?
I guess my point wasn't necessarily that well, I guess it was that we consider, I don't know, I just want to be consistent
Right.
with everybody in town, and seems like, that we weren't being consistent, so that was my concern. But then Jeff, you raised a very good point about some buildings aren't, I mean, there's just not the place for that big a sign, which this would not be, and I think that's a consideration. I'm not sure if maybe, I don't know if when we approve, well, I'm not sure how long the sign in front of the Greenway Trig building has been there. But,
Well, I remember it being there in the 70s.
yeah.
Yeah, so it goes back way.
And I'm certainly, well, a couple points. One, the guidelines are just that. The board has the discretion to vote either 4-1, 5-0, you know, if we see something that is deemed appropriate. Now, it's always been my hope to try to get the guidelines informed to where you can hand them out and everybody knows what's expected, to remove subjective items. But I'm not sure relative to signage that you can always do that. I looked, I tried to do a little bit of research. I couldn't find anything on point relative to what the historical precedence was for multi-tenant signs. You know, looking in areas in Massachusetts, you know, in other historical locales, it's all over the board. So, going back to what Mr. Giesler stated, I don't want to say on a case-by-case nature, but it's just trying to be consistent in the methodology that we're applying.
Well, my comment about ADA requirements may have sounded a little bit off the wall, but the point I was trying to make is that if it projects off the building more than 4 inches, then ADA requires the bottom of the bottom panel to at least be 7 feet above the sidewalk. And then if you allow the area for each tenant, that gets to be a pretty big honking sign.
Right.
And it overwhelms the facade,
Correct.
in my opinion.
I guess one issue for us to figure out is under these guidelines, when it says, it basically says that you're allowed a sign, you're allowed a sign per business. And therefore you can have a multi-tenant sign that has more than one business. But then it says, individual signs should not exceed 4 square feet. So we need to decide, does that mean that each business sign on the multi-tenant sign is required to not exceed 4 square feet, or the entire multi-tenant sign does not exceed 4 square feet? Because we've interpreted that different ways in different circumstances. So I mean, once we decide that, then I think beyond that, we can vary the guidelines if we have to. If there's a location where there's just not enough room for all those signs, then that's just the case. But I think we need to figure out what this guideline means in terms of multi-tenant signs.
Well, then
Or make it
my,
clear.
well, I mean, my interpretation was the sign.
The entire multi-tenant sign.
The entire multi-tenant sign cannot exceed 4 square feet, because typically those are associated, you know, basically one sign, one building. To do otherwise, going back to Mr. Weaver's comment, you can have multiple signs that really overwhelm the face of the structure. If each sign, if each business within that building is allowed one sign that is 4 square feet, then you have 3, all of a sudden you have 12 square feet of signage, you know, out front.
And I can't think of any other business other than the Greenway Trig building that they've allowed.
Yeah.
4 square feet.
Yeah. And I can't think by default that we should think that, okay, well, Greenway Trig has a space for it, whereas the one that we voted on last time basically had this little strip where they could nail a sign in and
Correct.
hang them. So
And I
think by
contacted
default-
Pulaski's planning department concerning this, and of course, we're much more restrictive than Pulaski is. Theirs is 32 square feet.
Wow.
Yeah, so
My
they're the only
lord.
other CLG in this area,
Wow.
so it was really
The
the
big
only
neon lights,
difference that we could-
32
everything's
square
pretty
feet on the side of a building.
Right.
Wow.
Again, I don't wanna, say on a case-by-case nature. Typically, whenever we do have signage consideration, it is one building, you know, one sign versus the multi-tenant. I'm certainly open to, suggestions as to going forward. You know, if you had a locality that had adequate space, such as the Trig, then I think an exception could be warranted. But
I mean, I guess we could make our guidelines say multi-tenants, the entire multi-tenant sign should be a size compatible with the available space or something,
I mean, there's nothing to prevent that, you know, we could have 4 square feet for signage and then actually have a subcategory for multi-tenant signage that, you know, if it's a multi-tenant sign, then, you know, an exception may be made up to 5 square feet, 6 square feet, whatever that number is.
You've got one that you're gonna be seeing, probably on the next agenda, they're within the 4 square feet, but they're also looking to add tenant space underneath the sign, so I think that's kind of the trend that people are looking to go to.
Well, again, if you're in a building adjacent to the sidewalk, the comment you made is a very, very valid point. Such as you don't want to be ducking your head, you know, as you're walking down the sidewalk. And you don't want the signage to actually overwhelm and detract from the buildings itself. I would hate to see, you know, large sign in front of the tavern, Penn Stewart, any of these that are older structures. The building is the attraction, not the signage.
I mean, it says that really 42C signs should be appropriate to the size or location.
So, I mean, we may have the latitude right now.
I mean, there it is, right there.
You know, the only thing I would caution is whenever we do that, you know, to make sure it is 4 to 1 or 5 to 0, 5-0, one of the two. I don't think we really answered that, did we?
Not really. I mean, I'm in agreement with what we did. I could tell that they were somewhat frustrated, and, I mean, I haven't talked to anybody since the meeting or before, either one, but, you know, we're not a really incredibly popular board as it is anyway. And, you know, you're telling people what they can and can't do with their property, and, you know, I think we just need to make sure that if someone's being told, you can't do this even though building 2 blocks down has exactly that, then we need to make sure that we have a good explanation for why that is, to where we have some buy-in to what we're doing.
And that's an excellent point. And again, it goes back to trying to be consistent, you know, in the interpretation of the guidelines, so that everyone knows what to expect. I view these as covenants and restrictions.
Right.
For all practical purposes. You know, you buy in the OH district, here are the covenants, conditions that you need to comply with. You know, some folks don't like that, appreciate that, or anything, and I certainly understand it. But hopefully they did enough research, due diligence beforehand, so that they knew what standard they were going to be held to.
Well, that's my exact point, though, is that this says individual signs should not exceed 4 square feet. Well, that could just as easily be interpreted to mean individual signs per business cannot exceed 4 square feet, and they were within that, and we didn't let them do that. So
Yeah.
I'm thinking, even if you do your due diligence, our guidelines don't explain that. So I think we need to have clear guidelines.
I
on
agree.
that issue.
I agree.
Yeah, well, it's been an argument for probably
Yeah,
12 years. of being on it.
Yeah, I mean, we're trying to redo because there's a lot of gray areas.
So maybe we need to make that grayer. I mean, I don't know.
Well, why don't, let me do this. let me try to come up
Can you draft it?
with some language and then present it to the board for consideration. Now, in order to revise the guidelines, that actually has to be, I think, a recommendation to council. Council has to approve it. But I know of no restriction on us. The same thing we're doing relative to the roofing. That, okay, here are the standards that we're gonna be adhering to. And then communicate that directly with staff so that, that can be disseminated.
Yeah, I'd like for you to, I'm not an attorney, but maybe, maybe an attorney would be able to write something about metal roofing that would address the striations and the sheen. I think that's as big a problem as the striations.
Yeah, I think you're right.
I would imagine if we are gonna change the language, that it would probably have to be a public hearing, for you to vote on, and then, make a recommendation to council. That would also have to be it.
Okay, well, I mean, the first step is, let me try to disseminate some information, some language to the committee under discussion. And then, if the committee's in favor of it, then we can proceed to the next, whether that's a public hearing, whether that's, presentation to council, whatever the appropriate steps are at that point. Sound reasonable?
Were you around when we were working on that before? I mean,
Would be.
Peyton
I'm sure I would, yes.
I mean, we were working on that years ago.
Oh, yeah,
It just
yeah.
never went anywhere.
To switch gears, real quick, we've been working for a couple months, trying to put in a walking path at, Mr. Ground's property. We
Which
try-
property?
Mustard Grounds.
Mr. Ground's.
Okay.
To utilize the parking there off of Hagee and Puget. DHR has finally given us the go-ahead to do that, after an archaeological study was performed, several weeks back. So, if you all would like to take a look at that, and vote on, the walking path, we can do that at the next meeting.
Sure.
Sounds good.
It's not gonna be asphalt, is it?
Oh, yeah, Mike.
Like that trail from, comes back to
No,
town?
it's width of the bucket, 5 foot or so, just crushed aggregate
Okay.
walking path.
With that said, is there any other business?
I move we adjourn then.
Todd?
I have a motion for adjournment. Do I have a second?
Second.
Oh. That's it. Okay. I have a motion and a second for adjournment. Roll call, please.
Mr. Webb?
Aye.
Mr. Weaver?
Aye.
Mr. Geisler?
Aye.
Mr. Neese? Mr. Johnson?
Aye.